You want to know what watching the movie Excalibur feels like? It feels like you just walked to the back of your local library. You find an old King Arthur book with no publishing date on it, no author, just the title and written by unknown. You blow off the dust, you see small black text stamped upon paper, slightly discolored with time. As you read its opening sentences, you already feel drawn and immersed into a fantasy world outside of your time, because that is what the film Excalibur is. Not just another King Arthur story, but a fantastical one, a weird one, and an execution that feels as timeless as it does dreamlike. Allow me to convince you why you should go watch Excalibur.
The future has taken root in the present. It is done.
One man! One king!
John Boorman's Excalibur.
Knights of the Round Table, we shall always come together in a circle to hear and tell of deeds good and brave.
Excalibur, directed by John Boorman and released in 1981, takes a very classical approach to the story of King Arthur. We are first introduced to a lawless land where people are constantly at each other's throats. They fight for stupid reasons. They fight for no reason. What this kingdom needs is a king, one to unite them amidst all that chaos. From there, we follow centuries of fantasy, ranging from the Sword and the Stone, the Lady of the Lake, palace intrigue, Arthur's rise, trials, tribulations, as both he and the audience learn what it means to have honor, and what losing that honor can do to us and the ones we hold dear. I don't know if you have noticed, but there's recently been a resurgence in the fantasy genre, particularly in bookstores and the novel space. Stories like The Way of Kings, A Court of Thorns and Roses, Fourth Wing, but even re-interest in Lord of the Rings and its spin-offs or Game of Thrones. They've all slammed both social media and our current zeitgeist. Amidst that, including myself, honestly, many have been on the lookout for a fantasy that kind of grounds it all. These stories, while beloved, can be complex and long, with either a high barrier to entry or yield a setting that is so high fantasy or so extravagant in the amount of dragons and spell casting and lore they throw at you that we just start to desire a more simple, focused, terse approach to a fantasy tale that distills the genre only to its most basic and necessary elements and then doubles down on them. There is no better place to find those aspects than in this King Arthur story. You have your adventure, you have your Knights of the Round Table, you have your magical Merlin, your mythical quests for ancient artifacts, you have a personal drama that underpins it all. I love Arthur. He starts off as a peasant, obviously, and instead of this grand hero moment that you would typically see in a movie like this, he just like pulls the sword out of the stone as a joke. He's just like, yeah, what the hell, let me try, right? Which is totally realistic. What's the worst that could happen? The second he pulls it out, you immediately feel him and his world change around him though. All of a sudden, in this completely lawless land, this peasant shows up and turns out to be this king of legend. That's interesting enough, but Excalibur the movie goes beyond that. By not just giving Arthur the sword, but by giving to him and saying, all right, buddy, you got the sword. Now what? He has to find his bravery and he has to find it fast. And that leads to these scenarios that show why he's fit to be king. For example, of course, he pulls the sword out and he's like, all right, now what do I do with this thing? He chooses to help a knight whose castle is under siege, despite his severe lack of experience. I mean, he was literally just like mowing hay 10 minutes before this. At a point, he even hands his sword, Excalibur, to the enemy to ultimately get him to stand down and surrender, which is a broader commentary on the sword Excalibur itself. As a character, honestly, there is a reason this film is named Excalibur. This sword is special. This sword is different. It means something to us. It means something to this kingdom. It stands for good virtues like forgiveness and honor, which are both timeless themes that fit this timeless film. Sure, you may have a sword that's existed since the beginning of time, buddy, but who are you? What's the point in wielding that sword if you're not worthy of it? Anyone can wield a pointy stick and rush it into battle, but holding Excalibur has to mean something more. Any sword is forged to kill. This sword is meant for something else. There are two other key scene stealers here, and one of them is absolutely Merlin. Merlin, he steals the show. He honestly does. You can tell he's centuries old because he carries himself like he's seen a lot of crap a lot of bullshit from men. He doesn't believe humanity is good enough anymore, which of course leads to some great humor. He is absolutely the comic relief here. I can relate him most closely to Phil from Hercules as this magical mentor figure to Arthur, who feels so integral to the memory this film has, but it also leads into bigger moments where he does intervene and become a bigger part of things. And in this chaotic world where a magical wizard arrives, just feels like a force of nature constantly trying to course correct. He'll give a power to a knight just so that a war will finally end, just for that knight to do something stupid and ruin everything in the process. So Merlin is he's done with all the BS and sees Arthur as his last hope of goodness in a sort of way. The second scene stealer here is just the eye candy, the visual treat that is watching this film. There are beautiful landscapes and waterfalls and castles, just as much as there is grime and mud. It feels fantastical as is, but what makes the film feel truly otherworldly is something you've probably already noticed by now. It's this glimmer, it's this shine. It's reserved for any object that reminds you of how otherworldly and how dreamlike this story is supposed to feel. Excalibur itself, Merlin's helmet, those waterfalls, the Knights of the Round Table, or their walls within Camelot. It's such an effective immersion mechanism because we know what a castle looks like, right? We know what water looks like, I hope. But when we see Camelot in its magical shine instead, our castles don't have that. It immediately transports you. Other things you should know before going into this. It's still a very mature film. This is not for kids. Arms will get chopped off. People will shapeshift into other men's wives. Other weird stuff. And also, you know, like any film, this film is not perfect. Mainly, it's got some pacing. It's got some pacing issues. When you say a movie has pacing issues, you usually mean that it drags. It's very slow and boring. This is the exact opposite. We sprint through this 140-minute runtime. We cover a lot of ground. Years pass by in seconds. Moments that need development to hit harder are not given the proper time to do so. They need more room to breathe. For example, at a point, Arthur breaks Excalibur, which is this huge deal, right? It's because he realizes in this big moment that he may not be as honorable as he thinks he is. He then monologues for like 30 seconds and is all of a sudden worthy of the sword again. They just give it back to him. That's like the entirety of the first Thor movie in about 2 minutes of runtime. The Knights of the Round Table are here, but there's no setup to that either. There's a legitimate, I'm not kidding, there's a point in the movie where Arthur's just like, we should have a table that is round. And all the knights are like,
say that again?
hell, the quest for the Holy Grail is in this movie. And we never even I could not tell you why they went on this quest. A situation happens and the knights are like, Arthur, what are we gonna do? And I was just like, I don't fucking know, just go find the grail, I guess. But the important themes, the ones that matter, are still here. And even if at times they could be explored a bit deeper, they're still explored and they're done so earnestly. I mean that. There's a true earnest here that you can feel that you don't really see in films today. You can tell that if Excalibur was made now, a lot of the methods and techniques and even ideas would absolutely not be used. How someone gets stabbed with a sword at one point, it's just so clear they did the musical theater like under the arm thing and they go, ah! And I'm sitting here like, ah yes, movie magic. A modern interpretation would obviously look something closer to The Green Knight or Guy Ritchie's King Arthur Legend of the Sword movie. Both films I love. That's right, I love both of them. But that is absolutely part of the charm. What Excalibur catches could not be captured in the same way today. You need the slight grain in the film. You need the sincerity. You need the occasional stage production-like feel to some of its set pieces. You need all of those to be transported in the way this immerses you. So if you were ever craving some fantasy that feels pure, that feels classic, that feels like it is the root of so much other fantasy media that we consume to the point where it is truly timeless, I highly suggest that you add Excalibur to your watch list. Have you seen it already? What did you think? Or what are some other recommendations that you may have for me or the other folks watching? Let me know down in the comments below, and for more movie chats like these over a cup of coffee, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.